Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a wine from Bordeaux. This is a Medoc wine. So it's actually from the Bas Medoc, but they don't tend to put Bas Medoc on it. It's the most northerly part of the Medoc. So this is Chateau Tour Saint Bonnet, and it's the 2014 vintage of that. Now, Tour Saint Bonnet is famous for making really quite a traditional, maybe slightly old-fashioned style of quite well-structured Medoc wine. Sort of wine that one would tend to want to age for about 10 years before broaching. So this should be at a good point of its development. There are records of this estate dating back to the 15th century, so it may well predate that. However, the first records of wine being made here come from the 17th century. The wine's currently a Cru Bourgeois, and in fact throughout the period that there have been the Cru Bourgeois rating, it's always been rated as a Cru Bourgeois. The estate is a 40-hectare estate. It lies in the commune of Saint-Christoly, which is really quite far north up the Médoc. So you're north of places like Château Tour, more than 10 kilometres north of Saint-Estèphe. And here they have a lovely gravel bank giving sort of good free draining soils. So you've got the moderating influence of that body of water. You've got these lovely free draining soils, and this is one of the larger estates in this part of the Médoc. I'm saying the estate's viewed as being quite traditional in terms of its winemaking. It was purchased in 1903 by the Lafon family, and it's continued in the ownership of the Lafon-Merlet family since then, so for over 120 years. 2014 was really quite a challenging vintage for many reasons. Not least for the fact that in this part of the Médoc, some of the growers were very badly hit by hail. As far as I can see, Tour Saint Bonnet avoided that. But there'd been a wet start to the vintage, and spring and early summer were really quite humid. Midsummer again got quite cool, and it wasn't until September you got conditions of an Indian summer where it was dry, it was warm, and actually the fruit got relatively ripe. The wines have some really quite nice supple tannins, they have reasonable alcohol levels and good concentration. The quality of the 2014 vintage is actually pretty good, and although in this part of the world it can be a little hit and miss, a lot of the wines were really quite approachable. In terms of the varietal makeups of the vineyard here, this is planted to 45% of Merlot, 45% of Cabernet, with the remaining vineyards being planted to Malbec and Petit Verdot, with each variety making up 5%. The blend, however, in 2014 actually favours Merlot. It was 65% Merlot with 30% Cabernet Sauvignon. The remaining 5% of the blend being made up by Petit Verdot. There's no significant amount of Malbec in this. Fermentation is quite traditional and goes on in cement vats. The wine ages in oak, but rather than using smaller barrels, the sort of the 225 litre barrique, as standard they actually use foudre instead. It would be French oak, but a larger oak. And this vintage spent 20 months aging in those barrels, just to sort of fix the tannins and the perfumes in the wine as a result of the gentle oxidation that goes on through the barrel. So yes, a well-located property with lovely soils, one that has deep-rooted traditions, and the wine I'm tasting is nearly 10 years old. So let's have a look at it and see what we make of it. First thing to say is that the wine is almost opaque. Looking down through the wine, I can't see the stem of the glass at the bottom there. It doesn't seem particularly dark and inky, but it's a ruby red. It's not particularly losing much colour to the rim. As I swirl it, the wine has 13.5% alcohol, and it's clinging and very slowly forming some tears there. Let's have a look at the aromas and see what we make of those, shall we? The aromas are rich, complex and earthy. So this earthiness dominates a sort of a red, plummy note. There are hints of graphite on top of this. Some of that may be coming from cedar, but actually there's quite a savoury, concentrated, maybe slightly figgy, almost bitter licorice note there. Again, coming back to an earthiness. So let's have a taste. The wine starts with quite firm, well-structured, gripping tannins, and yet that's supported by an almost chocolatey texture. There are notes of sort of dried fruit, raisin, fig, but then there's a core of this sort of slightly sweet-edged licorice there. And that licoricey note sort of continues, and perhaps that's where you see some slightly drying cedar notes, so almost showing a sort of touches of cinnamon towards the finish there. The wine's medium to full-bodied. The alcohol's nicely in balance. It's giving a little bit of warmth, but there's rich, concentrated fruit on the finish that then actually sort of gives way to this more drying cinnamon, nutmeg, spice notes. If anything, the wine ends with quite a structured finish, which is firm, a little bit austere and drying. But then that's overlaid with just these very faint notes of those dried fruit and licorice. I think in many ways the wine's delivered what I was expecting. It's rich, it's full, it's well structured, it's nicely mature now, but its tannins suggest to me that it's a wine that could continue to develop for at least 4 or 5 more years in the bottle. Now, I did look at the Wine Searcher aggregated critic score for this wine and was actually a little surprised to see that it was only 86 out of 100. And I can see some reasons why it wouldn't score particularly high. There is this quite drying finish, but at the same time there's a lovely concentration of fruit, there's some real character. So I think a score of 86 out of 100 might be being slightly hard on this wine. I would certainly suggest that you follow the link in the notes below, which I'll put there to direct you to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, and have a look at the price, because Tour Saint Bonnet can be a great value for money wine. It's a wine certainly that I've bought on Primeur as a nice accompaniment to some of my more expensive wines. And I think it is a wine that offers some real traditional Bordeaux and Medoc style at what is a really very approachable price. So yes, do follow that link, as well as the pricing and availability. You can also see on that page, by using the tabs, more background information about how the wine is made, about the producer, the region, the grape varieties that go into it. You can also access through those tabs the critics notes. You can see other users' reviews, any awards it's won. You can look at the pricing history, and you can also do a vintage comparison through those tabs. So hopefully everything's available there for you to make an informed buying decision if you're interested in purchasing this wine. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, it would be fantastic if you'd consider signing up and subscribing to our YouTube channel. That way you can set yourself a notification and be alerted every time we publish a new tasting. If you have friends that you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. We'd really appreciate your endorsement in that way. If you have any feedback you'd like to leave, please pop a note in the box below. Let us know what you think about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. So once again, thank you for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting, and I do hope you'll take some time to come and join us for another tasting in the very near future, won't you? Bye for now.